Hey there, Kill by Kill listeners. I've got a brand new action-packed revenge thriller for you, and it comes to you from Republic Pictures. The title, Hard Home. It stars Simone Kessel, and it's this new tension-filled flick where a mother's high-tech home becomes a trap for her daughter's killer as they each play a deadly game of cat and mouse. Now, you can buy Hard Home right now on digital. It's rated R. But the good folks at Republic Pictures have provided us with a small number of free digital codes just for our fans. All you have to do is email us at killbykillpod@gmail.com. That's killbykillpod@gmail.com. Put Hard Home in the title, and you can have a chance to win your own copy to infiltrate your own home entertainment system. And now, the body count continues. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Die on Time is here. That's right, we're talking about 1991's Popcorn on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the University of California at Ocean View, Jamaica, USA. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And we're going to unpack all the gory details of Popcorn today in the hopes that a film studies student's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we can make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person that I trust to find a cure for Police Academy syndrome. The one, the only, Zena Radcliffe.
You didn't ask me how I'm doing.
I'm sorry.
I had something all set up.
I have a sore throat because my child gave me a sore throat before he went to camp, and I literally choked on my words. Gina, how are you doing?
I was going to say that I spent some time digging through my tank full of faces, and I pulled out just the right one for this occasion.
Man, I'm telling you, if you don't have a tank full of faces, are you really ready to tackle this competitive job market?
I don't think so. I mean, you need a different face for every occasion.
And you need to keep them wet. That's the thing about faces. They don't tell you in Mission Impossible. You gots to keep your faces wet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to scare you, Gina, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Now, you know her from her YouTube and TikTok channels, and of course is 1/3 of the Bloody Disgusting podcast. And now I'm proud to say a Kill by Kill returning champion, the one, the only Zena. How are you doing today, Zena?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you guys?
Oh,
good.
Lovely. And so excited to have you on board once again. Now, last time we had you on to talk about Killer Kids.
Yes.
But you're always in that rotation, and I'm waiting for that magic moment. And then I see during the spring, you just off the cuff going, you know what movie I love? You know what movie I love to watch and talk about is 1991's Popcorn. And I'm like, this movie's been on the list for a while. We need to pull the trigger on this bad boy. We need to figure out what's going on with Popcorn. So Zena, when was the first time that you watched Popcorn?
I was late to watching it. Sadly, I didn't watch it as a kid in the 90s. I watched it maybe 7-8 years ago. Like, the crazy thing is I would always see it as a kid, around. I would see the poster. I would see it in video stores, but it was never available.
Yeah.
It was never available. And then when it did play or air on cable, it was like the end. So it's just, I can't watch the end. So I would always miss it.
Sure.
And then finally, I don't remember who was streaming it because, this is the kind of movie where it does not stream for too long. It doesn't stay on streaming services like for too long. So
Yeah.
I was finally able to check it out, and I fell madly in love with it.
It is a super fun little flick. I don't think it's trying to be anything more than it is. And just before we started, you were talking with Gina, and she had mentioned that because it kind of disappears for a period of time, I have a very lovely Synapse Blu-ray of it, and it looks gorgeous, but it isn't something that is readily available to stream. I think last year, for a little while, it was up on Amazon. It was up on Shudder. And
it's I actually watched it on YouTube, but I am pretty sure it was just someone's rip of it.
Yeah. Unfortunately. But it is a film that should be out there a little bit more because it's weirdly in the middle of a couple of different moments in horror that I think we're going to get into a little bit later. But Gina, I forgot to ask you, when was the first time you watched Popcorn?
Well, I vaguely remember when this came out in theaters and thinking, well, this looks pretty interesting. And that villain is very creepy looking. And then just kind of, disappeared. I think it was in the theater for about 35 seconds.
Right.
And then it popped up on cable about a year later as Once Upon a Time, when a movie came out in theater, even if it did poorly, it would take at least a year before it would show up to watch at home as opposed to like the following Tuesday.
Really let that cult cook.
Yeah, so I had it. I happened to come across it, and I was very into it. I remember watching it quite a few times, and then it sort of just disappeared, and then kind of just disappeared from my mind. But then, as getting involved in the horror side of social media, I recall seeing someone bring it up a couple of years ago and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. But not a lot of it. And then watching it last night was probably the first time in 25 years at least I've seen it. And it really was a situation of like, oh, it's all coming back to me now. Okay.
I think there are a couple reasons why I don't think it's built the level of cult that it would have otherwise. And we've brought it up here. It's just not available enough.
Yeah.
Like I have a Blu-ray. I think that Blu-ray has now gone out of print. I'm not sure you can buy Blu-ray copies of Popcorn currently, which is a damn shame because it should be available for people to watch. You can kind of find a very dark rip of it on YouTube, which is a bummer. It's just one of those things where you feel like more people should know about this movie and yet don't, because it just kind of, between the availability and I think the era in which it came out, 1991. So we got to set the table for this, because you have the slasher boom, which is early 80s, and it kind of really starts to peter out as A Nightmare on Elm Street both booms and then crashes. And it's a fallow period, and people don't know exactly what to do. We talked about Wolf on this podcast once upon a time, and that was in the early 90s with
Dr. Giggles too. It was all
Dr. Giggles.
That like 91, that like 90 to 95 period.
Yeah, where it's just people don't know what to do it. I think there's a lot of direct-to-video slashers, but theatrical slashers are few and far between. And yeah, between this and Dr. Giggles, you're talking about two movies that deserve a much bigger audience than what they got. But I also think they fall in between movements, because as much as this is a slasher comedy proto before the Wes Craven twin arguments of the pitfalls and fallacies of the slasher film in New Nightmare in 94 and Scream in 96. But you also have the nostalgia reinvention of monster movies, which is also connected to this film in American Werewolf and Monster Squad and Carpenter's The Thing and Fright Night, Terror in the Aisles, you name it. There are all these things that are like, hey, horror movies are fun and good type things, and reclaiming the B-movie past of monster films. And so this kind of takes both of those elements and smashes to get them together in one presentation. And I think sometimes people get a little lost in the sauce in terms of, well, this is neither fish nor fowl. It's neither a complete celebration of B movies like a Monster Squad is or Fright Night, nor is it a complete satire of the slasher cycle like a Scream is. It's in between them.
Yeah, it's sort of what the particularly with the recreations of the old timey B movies they were showing. It actually reminded me a lot of Amazon Women on the Moon.
Yeah, yes, it has a lot of Amazon Women on the Moon going on.
And I think people just did not know what to make of it.
It's I think somewhat confusing. I mean, Zena, is this more of like, do you take this on as a sort of comedic take on the slasher, or is this more of a revelry of B movie pasts a la Matinee for you?
I do feel like there's more of a comedic tone, which I don't think that was purposely done. I think that happened because behind the scenes, it was like the production was like a nightmare. You know, yeah. I remember just reading about it, 2 directors, 2 writers, someone gets fired, someone's leave, it's just like a lot of stuff that was going on. And so like you could see that there was like one writer that was trying to add in the humor, but then there's like another one that wanted that supernatural mystery going on, like, and then they just stitched it together and they pretty much just tried to save it, which I think that they did. And even before we did start recording, this is like kind of me jumping ahead. I know of a lot of people who are not like a fan, like they're not fans of this movie. And I understand why, because you could see that, the more I watch it, the more you could see that, okay, it just feels like there's like 3 different movies. And it actually kind of is,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've done, Patrick, a couple movies recently that feel like, they started making one movie, then realized, this is only 45 minutes long. We better add another movie to this. Yeah. But I think this does, for the most part, make it work.
Yeah. It does have a touch of Night Train to Terror syndrome, but it is going for, these are 3 separate B movies, and we're celebrating William Castle-esque gimmick, theatrical experiences, which is something that modern audiences today have almost no relationship to. And I wonder how much outside of baby boomers at the time were super connected to those William Castle-esque gimmicks. Just to review some of the things that this touches on. The giant mosquito, I would assume, would be the skeleton gag from House on Haunted Hill, which they would dolly out a flying skeleton to go past the audience. And then they also had the Tingler. That was the electrified seats gag. And then Odorama is kind of something that's been around a bit. It was kind of modified more by John Waters for Polyester, in which you had a scratch and sniff card. But it's been a gimmick that people played around with. So I think that sort of, projecting that onto the audience is really aiming towards an older audience than what Popcorn was really aiming for initially, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they, like I was saying before we recorded, I think that this had come out 5 to 10 years later, it would have done better.
But then again, 5 to 10 years past when it happened, there are so many things in this movie that you're like, hold on, I've seen this before. Not to mention the endless parade of Mission Impossible masks that get thrown around, or the horror movie in a movie theater, which had been done a couple times previous to this in more narrowed focused films like Demons and Anguish, which is the feel good hit of when it came out. If you want to feel joy in your heart, watch Anguish one of these nights.
Yeah, if you thought The Dark and the Wicked was a light comic romp, watch Anguish.
If you need something to hold on to in the night that gives you the wind vibes, dig into Anguish, why don't you? But you also have, like, there's the more famous sequences from the original and remake of The Blob. Those also take place in a theater. So there's a bunch of elements here that almost Frankensteined together that make it really a unique package deal. But I agree with you, Zena. I think some of the laughs are intentional in those B-movie segments. And then some of them are just what happens when you film an entire movie and then replace all the dialogue in ADR.
Right.
Popcorn really attempts to bridge the gap between the dangers of nostalgia and film enthusiasm and the megalomania of film creation. The villain of Popcorn employs these interactive elements of the 50s and 60s horror schlock to dispatch his victims. He turns the harmless into harmful. These mere entertainments become deadly implements in the hands of someone who sees the silver screen as a tool to manipulate the masses. Or so we think, because in the end, it is someone who has been a victim rather than the perpetrator who is replicating his abuser's crimes. Oh my God, there's a real dramatic chord to this film if you give it enough of a shot.
Yeah, and like I said, villain, the actor playing the villain is acting his little heart out. He is putting 175% in his performance.
Oh, Toby.
Absolutely. So what is your experience, Zena, with we're talking about the actor who played Toby, Tom Willard?
You know, this was like my first time, RIP to him, seeing him, that I at the time like can like remember, but then looking at like his background, he was also in My Girl, you know, and I remember, you know, that movie traumatized a lot of us kids. You know,
Sure.
Yeah, but he has like quite the resume. But what stands out for me is My Girl, you know, and then obviously with Popcorn. But I know that he does have other things going. He had other things going on.
I mostly remember him as being a comic actor. Probably the most notable role people our age would remember would be One Crazy Summer, when he and Bobcat Goldthwait, I think they're playing brothers. I think they're called like the Stork Brothers, if I remember.
The Stork Twins,
but he was in a ton of things. Yeah, he was in Grease too. He was in a bunch of TV shows. He was like this lovable lug kind of character. So it was very, I mean, I knew who he was before seeing him in Popcorn. And so it was very jarring to see him. He's basically doing a major heel turn in it, but also being kind of tragic at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, he's being allowed to give you an entire scope of his talents, because he's very much played the Toby in a lot of the movies that he's been in. He's this, as you said, Gina, a lovable goof. Even in a film like Parasite that we covered a couple of years ago.
That's right. He was in that.
He was suckled by a burnt oven mitt with teeth. Zena, have you watched Parasite?
No.
Oh, are you in for a treat? And by treat, that is in quotes, and those quotes are more of a warning sign.
Okay, but I'm kind of sold on it. You know, Charles Band directed it. Like sold. I love unhinged insanity.
It is unhinged. I don't know if it goes fully insane. It's not intentionally insane. It might drive you there, but that was not where it had circled on the map when it took off. So yeah, Villiard is usually that goof, but he's getting that opportunity to load up the platter and give you comedy and give you drama and give you joy and tragedy and mania. And he's just allowed to get unhinged in the last half an hour of this movie. And you kind of feel him relish that moment, a moment that's made even more tragic by the fact. And Gina, what is it with this fucking year where we have watched a couple of films now with actors who were stolen from us by AIDS.
Yeah, this is one of his last major roles.
It's just so terrible.
Yeah.
And it's certainly an entire generation of people who could have brought us more of their art and were stolen by this disease. Fuck you, Ronald Reagan. Anyways, let's get back to popcorn before I go on a rant. This is a real interesting, milieu for all these actors to play. And I feel like it's filled with people who you've seen places, but never really given the opportunity to do what they want to do. No more so than Jill Schoelen, who pops up here and there, especially in this late 80s, early 90s period of horror.
Right.
She's in The Stepfather. And then, what is the sequel that she's in? Oh, my God.
Curse 2, The Bite.
Oh, it's a Curse 2. I didn't know there was a Curse 2.
That movie makes me laugh. It's a good time.
Okay, that's good to know. But I was thinking of, that's awesome. But I was thinking of When a Stranger Calls Back, which is... And
I believe she is also in the Cutting. What's it called? The Cutting Class.
Cutting Class.
With Brad Pitt's major film debut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another movie that does not know if it's a comedy or a horror movie and just starts vacillating between the two. It has Heather's disease. It's like, we're a Heather's. Definitely. And you're like, you're a Hay? You're an HEA. I don't think you're a full Heather's. I'm telling you right now. She's also in the Robert Englund version of The Phantom of the Opera. Mm-hmm. So 2 times in her career, she's just like in a sewer under a theater being menaced by a burned man. That is something that she happened upon.
Well, there's typecast and there's typecast.
That's an interesting one right there. And then just Dee Wallace sauntering in with yet another kicky short haircut, as she's wont to do, and just lending her very breezy, Altman-esque reality to any movie that she's in, whether she's being attacked by a vicious dog or lamenting the fact in E.T. the Extraterrestrial that her ex-husband has gone to Mexico and he doesn't even like Mexico. It's someone's car. What is that? Is that a fire alarm?
Yeah, I think that's the background. All right.
Okay. Sorry. I'm just making sure I wasn't having auditory hallucinations.
New York City, baby.
It kind of added, it added something.
It did. It was a warning light. I need to keep to task here. Gina, so far in the past month or so, we've had 2 movies where college students reveal that they have forgotten their entire childhoods.
Yeah, that's like such an easy thing, like a easy plot device. It's like, I've been gaslit into forgetting everything that happened to me up to age 7.
2 doesn't seem like that many. It's just weird that they happened one after the other. And I just have to, I don't remember everything of my childhood, but I think almost being sacrificed on stage in a movie theater that burns down would be one of those memorable moments for me.
Yeah, she's not like a toddler. She looks like she's about 10 years old in these flashbacks.
It makes absolutely no sense that she does not remember any part of this. And she's like, oh, I'm having these dreams. And her mom aunt is like, let's go away to an Airbnb somewhere so you can forget again. I don't think that's going to help. I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
I'm going to ask you something, Zena, and I'm going to need you to be truthful about it, okay? Did your mom have that row of untouched cookbooks on the kitchen counter? Because mine sure did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think every mom had those.
I can tell you that they were very untouched in my household, as my mother murdered vegetables and forced me to eat them. And then later on, I discovered I like things like asparagus when they are not cooked in their own juices and then have them sucked out, and you're just left with limp, woody pulp. I love my mother. She did a lot of things right, just not asparagus.
Yeah, those spines were never broken in my mom's Betty Crocker how to cook books.
That Betty Crocker one was always interesting because it had that plastic spine, as if you were supposed to take out the individual recipes and use them and then insert them back in. That never happened in my household. It also becomes very obvious that the film wanted, on some level, to be set in Jamaica, where it was filmed, as they keep introducing elements of that very lovely island nation into the fabric of the film. So why, I ask both of you, would anyone try to convince an audience that it's in fact set in California?
Well, you would have to explain why the cast is predominantly of white people. I think it's in Jamaica.
Again, they're free to introduce more characters who happen to be black. That would be great. That's not really stopping anybody. You could have totally have done that. But when they flash to a sign that says the University of California at Ocean View, I'm like, the fuck you talking about?
It's like, not a place.
A, not a place. B, I can tell that's not California because California is brown. You can tell when a movie is filmed in California, like, oh, I don't know, Friday the 13th, 3, 4, and 5, because everywhere you look, it's brown. As opposed to the green of New Jersey, where the film was supposed to be set. But this movie goes out of its way to then include elements that would go, oh yeah, it's Jamaica. Like, there are many Jamaican house bands and reggae acts featured in the film. And you would just go, okay, that's great. I think more horror movie marathons should be broken up by reggae concerts.
I agree. I always felt that maybe they thought that it probably would have been more relatable. Maybe that would have just added too much. Like, they were already having so much things going on, and maybe, I don't know, they probably didn't think that would be relatable to some people.
I just think if you have this big of a bouillabaisse going, you might as well lean into it.
I agree.
You know,
I mean, I would assume that the reason why they just is because, University of California film school students, just kind of, makes more sense.
The University of Jamaica. Sure, I guess.
I mean, I suppose they might have a terrific film program for all I know. But.
I mean, I would have been intrigued.
Yeah, for all I know, it's the premier hub of Caribbean film studies. It could have built this up instead of worrying that it's not relatable enough. But before we introduce the other members of the cast, we have to talk about a new nominee that I have, Gina, for the Have You Considered My Penis Hall of Fame.
Boy.
And that is Mark.
This fucking
guy. Zena, defend your boy, Mark.
I really don't know what Maggie saw in him, at all.
He's pretty. He's pretty to look at.
He is, but he's dumb,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and not only that, he's been in there's a movie that I watched recently. It's kind of like, it's an older movie. It's from the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Fright Night, except it's with a cult called Night Visitor from 1989. So basically, he witnesses his teacher kill like this prostitute, and the teacher just so happens to be a part of a cult, a satanic cult, where they kill hookers, and so it's kind of like that. So it's like, I knew that he looked familiar, and then also he was in Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, which I know the movie is. I just have a love for that one. It just makes me so happy. It's funny.
No, that's on the calendar here. Whenever we really decide to dig into Phantoms, or maybe we've ruined it, because in the end, I feel like Popcorn is really at its heart a Phantom of the Opera movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Tried, yeah.
You have all the elements. You have burned tragic villain who does all sorts of theatrical tricks to off people because they're not operating inside the theater as he would wish. And he carries out his revenge. And they even go into the sewers underneath this movie theater at one point. Because of course it has a sewer down there. So for me, the only thing missing, and I guess it kind of comes in at the end, is you don't get him swinging. But we do get a dead swing from him.
It's very operatic the way it's shot.
When Mark, who is a big dummy and doesn't help at any single point in this movie, starts sliding down wires with his belt, I'm like, oh my God, we're fucking Phantom of the Paradise again. We're right back in it. And then he crashes into a bunch of boxes and does nothing.
I mean, I enjoyed seeing him get repeatedly punched and fall downstairs and run into things, but that was very satisfying.
The movie, I think, does have a serious sense of humor that he is not the greatest guy in the world and goes out of its way to make him suffer. And that is quite enjoyable.
Like, I don't know what he was attempting to accomplish by bringing this other woman to the film festival, because like as soon as like he gets these things, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Did he think he would show up to this film studies class born film festival and not run into Maggie? Is that what he thought in his little cooked peanut?
I think that he wanted to make her jealous, but she had a lot going on, so
yes.
It just backfired, obviously, for him.
She does have a lot going on, but I will also remind our audience, she abandons her post at the ticket booth for the entire run of one movie. So I would assume 90 minutes at least, or maybe even 80, goes by with her not at the ticket booth and a bunch of people going, I have $6. Why can't I come into this fucking movie?
But you know, she put the other girl. She asked the other girl to take over for her.
That other girl just takes over for her. And then when she comes back, she's like, did you enjoy your 80-minute fucking break?
Yeah, because that's insane, though.
It is insane. I would not like her after that. You had one job. Take $6, give people a ticket. Everyone else is trying to sell. Like Kelly Jo Minter is selling popcorn, candy, sodas, and T-shirts. Mm-hmm. And she's hawking all of that from one location. That one guy has one job: sit in a cage and yell. That's it.
But he does it so
That's all
well.
Leon does.
He did a good job.
Top-notch. Top-notch work from him. I was also surprised to remember upon rewatching this film that this movie has yet another Tina, a very rare horror character name.
Oh my
Tina.
God, the fucking Tinas, Jesus.
We are dying for Tinas. Like there's just, at a certain point, we're going to have to come up with what's your horror character name? Tina. That's all it is. There's just a Tina in every movie. Every movie has a mandatory Tina. And in this one, Tina sounds like she's from a Nordic country at certain points. And I was surprised to learn that she, the actress, is from Kentucky. So I don't know what the fuck that accent is doing.
She was gonna, she just put a little zhush in her performance.
Right. She's
like, I'm just gonna give myself an accent for no reason.
But that is the reason why we started the podcast, because you gotta signify yourself. You gotta arrive on the scene with something that makes you stand out. Otherwise, you're just gonna get washed away in giant plastic mosquitoes in this movie. You gotta do something to stand out.
Exactly, like be in a wheelchair for some reason.
Right. Bud is a wheelchair-bound individual, and between him and Leon, who do you think is the bigger proto-Randy that we've got going on? Because this is, I think, proto-Randy behavior, what is happening in this film class between the two of them.
I'm gonna say it's Bud.
Bud is the bigger Randy.
Yeah. Well, you know where you recognize who played Bud, what he was in, right? We've covered the movie.
Oh, now my mind is blown here because I could have sworn I've never seen this individual before, so I can't wait to learn.
He was in Christine.
You're right, Gina. Of course, you're right.
He was Moochie.
He was Moochie. and fucking Christine. He is so good in that movie.
He was also in The Curse. I know we, covered The Curse too, but he was in.
That's right. He was in The Curse.
He was terrible.
He was the brother, the older brother in that, right? Yeah, that's
Wait
right.
a second. He's Will Wheaton's brother in The Curse?
Yep.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, no, she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that, but she's right.
He's
Now,
a terrible person in the movie.
Oh yeah, he's awful. He's in full Gucci mode in The Curse. Now I have to ask, do you think the only reason why they put Bud in a wheelchair is so they can have that shot of it basically being electrocuted out of the wheelchair and just launches it across the room?
Gina, yes, of course.
Now see, I thought. No, but although if they did that, it would be lifting a little bit from another movie that sort of resembles Fade to Black. I thought there was going to be a big setup with Bud going down a flight of stairs in the wheelchair.
I mean, if he had gone down a flight of stairs and been launched O.J. Simpson in the Naked Gun style into the theater,
just doing some sort of triple Lindy in the audience.
Yes, exactly. Just hitting it and flipping multiple times.
5-star movie.
5 stars. All the way. All my doubts, all anything that was holding me back would be gone.
A stone cold classic.
And then, of course, we have Cheryl, played by who I consider now a horror icon, Kelly Jo Minter, wearing, I would say, the same costume she wore in summer school. There's every time I saw her in class, I'm like, I saw that look in summer school. Or she just knows how to dress herself and she won't let anyone else do it. And to that, I say, you're right.
She just comes to the set in her own clothes.
It works for her.
I mean, that hat that she wears is so burned into my brain, 1991. There are so many fantastic dancers in the background of hip hop music videos who wore that hat. This is just right around when the Fly Girls are wearing that sort of hat in interstitials. It is so very prime, so very choice. Then again, she's the only one who's kind of flaunting a figure in this motion picture, whereas Joanne, the blonde, appears to be borrowing hair from a 1930s cartoon.
Do not besmirch the name of Joni.
Is it Joni? It's not Joanne. Joni, my apologies.
I like Joni.
I love Joni, and I'm so glad that she made it to the end of the movie.
Me too.
Listen, Joni innocent, Joni fine. She loved the guy. At least she was into a guy who turned out to be a burned mass murderer. It happens to all of us. But I do have to ask, now, Gina, this is more of a question for you than I think for Zena. Because I would assume, Zena, that you were a millennial.
I am.
Whereas Gina and I are squarely in Generation X. Okay. And upon watching this film, a thought occurred to me, and I thought I would run it past Gina. What was it about our generation at this particular time where we covered every inch of our bodies like we were the fucking Amish?
That's a good question. I mean, and this is a little pre-grunge era. This was 91.
Yeah, it's so just on the cusp.
We weren't quite in all the flannel and the denim and the sack dresses yet.
Yeah, but this is squarely in the 90210 era.
Yeah, where we're neck to ankles in fabric. Yeah.
Yes.
I really don't know. I mean, part of it may have been that, we had it so hammered into us, no drugs, no casual sex, no nothing, that we were just trying to, or, a lot of, for speaking, for the young women of the time, a lot of, self-consciousness about the body. So, remember we were coming from the big era of fitness clubs were taking off and home aerobics. And, if you had the tiniest bit of chub, it was undesirable. You need to cover it. Men, I have no idea. I don't know why y'all buttoned your shirts all the way down to the wrists. Why you never let a little chest hair show, like nothing. Everything was very, very literally and figuratively buttoned up.
I don't know, but this movie is a great display of it. Of people just making sure you don't see an inch of flesh on them.
Yeah, it's a other than the fact that it's barely revealed that Tina and this professor, who I don't know, are you saving him for last, or are we just, is he just not worth mentioning?
Oh, he's absolutely worth mentioning.
Yeah. He's like probably what passes in this movie for the biggest star.
Well, it's between Tony Roberts, who we've covered on the show a few times, memorably in Amityville 3D, in which he fought a possessed swordfish and just looks around befuddled.
Yeah, he just looks confused throughout that entire movie.
Yes. Whereas his companion at work gets burned alive in a car and still reaches out to give skeleton hugs. That's how great she is. And Tony Roberts is doing fuck all in that movie. But I think why Tony Roberts is in the film at all is because he is the hair model in which everyone else is vibing off of. Him, Tom Villiard, the Bud, they all have these tight curly ditties.
Yeah, they do. They do all have that poofy hair. What I was going to say was that, this is a very oddly non-sexual slasher movie. The only guy you've got like a hint of an affair between Tina and this professor. See, they just kiss. You've got Maggie. You've got Maggie and her idiot boyfriend who she kind of puts him off because she's busy, but I think she's just really not that into him. And why should she be? He's a jerk. But for a slasher movie, it's pretty chaste.
Which I agree with you. I think that's surprising because I remember as soon as when Maggie, she arrived on campus, just the way he was acting toward, basically just humping her leg, and it's relax, you can't just say hi.
He arm bars her into a kiss. I've never seen that outside of a WWE wrestling ring. It's a very weird way to interact with somebody you're attempting to seduce. It's like, I'm going to prove to you that I'm horny for you. I don't know that requires proof. You don't have to display this way. It is so purely odd. But luckily, we're rid of Mark, at least for 20 minutes here, as the entire film crew, in response to their editing space being taken away, decide to put on a 3-movie horror-thon to raise money for their department. So they all go down to the Dreamland Theater in the Courthouse Square district of Jamaica, and into this auditorium that they're sitting in is Dr. M. And he is played with panache by Ray Walston, who is decided to show up for 1 day's worth of work and give you 5 days worth of coverage.
He's in that one scene and he owns that scene.
It's like, I will show up if you give me a theater cape and a cane, and then I will just start acting. Please make sure that the cameras have plenty of film in them. And when you're out of film, I'm out. That was his response. He makes an impression, much more of an impression than Tony Roberts does. But then again, the houseplant that is currently dying in front of me makes more of an impression than Tony Roberts on any given day. God bless his soul. He's left us. Now, another question I have for the both of you is, during the wonderful music montage of the kids cleaning up the theater, does any single line of Saturday Night at the Movies actually rhyme, or is it just free association? There doesn't seem, it's a story. I like the movies, but none of the couplets seem to connect at the end in a way that tells you this is a song. It's like they translated it from Finnish. Now, I have another question for you, Zena. Have you ever seen the film Death Spa?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. That's important. More people should see the film Death Spa. We learned a valuable lesson when we watched it. Well, a few lessons. One is, if you're on fire enough, it doesn't matter if your spine is still connected and you can walk. You can stand up in your wheelchair. The fire will do that to you. The second thing that we learned is computers do not control shower tiles. We're told that by the haunted twin of that burned woman. He tells us quite clearly if people were attacked in a shower by shower tiles, the computer had nothing to do with it. So who is controlling the letters that are popping off the marquee in a segment of this movie? They shoot off. And our aunt mother, Dee Wallace, and she just stands there with a gun in her hand, not shooting the letters, not shooting anything. How did that happen? Does our villain actually have telekinetic powers?
You see, I just assumed at this point, we were already in it. So I guess he had supernatural powers, just like how, with the band, when the power went out, but the band still went up on stage and they were
and were
playing
seen by people. Yeah.
Yeah. But they had electric instruments, So it's just like, you just got to let it go. Like I was just enjoying the music and having a good time. I didn't want to ask too many questions. And speaking of Death Spa, I know that we're not talking about that. I do love the movie. It's a good time. But you know what I've always found insane, and this is going to be a spoiler, just in case if someone's listening and you haven't seen it. So the woman, Catherine, right? She decided to possess and haunt the facility. Why didn't she just possess the girlfriend? Doesn't that make more sense? Like,
it does make more sense than your twin because
I don't know. It was just always just a thing. Like if I was in her shoes, that's what I would do.
It's true. But if she doesn't possess Captain Kirk's son in that movie, then you wouldn't get that fantastic shot of him turning around and half of his face being in makeup and him acting like half a lady. That is worth the price of admission in Death Spa.
But, and speaking of, prices, right? So with this film festival, I have a question for you both.
Of course.
Okay. So would you attend this film festival? It was only $10 and you received a lot.
That's a good question. I mean, I think their business plan is interesting in that it's not just 3 random movies. The goal is to give an audience you can only have this experience at a movie theater sort of thing, with the giant mosquito and being a 3D film and odorama and shocking seats. Like, that's not an experience that you can have at home. I can't even, I can play 3D movies and that's just about it with my home setup. But I suppose I could sit on an exposed wire if I wanted to. My son does provide odorama up, depending on what he's had for lunch. But that's just a teenager thing. Yeah,
all you need is just the fog.
Yeah. But from that standpoint, I think it's a decent business proposal. What say you, Gina?
Oh, I will 100% go. Absolutely.
And you get an impromptu in the dark, mostly until they open up the moonroof, reggae concert. Like, I would love for in the middle of a local horror-thon if Dred Zeppelin came up on stage and just started raging. That would be great. That would be fantastic. It would be very, very Southern California. Dred Zeppelin, for those who don't know, is a reggae-themed Led Zeppelin cover band that really exists and has for longer than popcorn has been.
I was going to say for a very long time.
A very long time. What we really learned from Dee Wallace going to the movie theater is that she's captured by very oiled up green arms. And then we don't see her again for an hour. Then the night of the big movie marathon, if you ever wanted to see up the noses of Ozzy D and Stevie G, good news, this movie's going to show it to you. The camera angle is sitting on the chin, looking right up a person's nose. And that's a tough angle to make it work. And yet Ozzy D and Stevie G, they're just that fucking good. Mark shows up with another girl because fucking, of course he does. Mark is such a fucking idiot. And now another echo of one of our previous films that we've covered just this year, Gina, is that Lanyard Gates in his opening costume really gives off big Sam Bouchard's indigenous scarecrow sort of vibes.
He does. Yes, he does. A little bit of that, a little bit of the Master from
Oh, Manos, the Hands of
Manos,
Fate.
the Hands of Fate. Yes, thank you. A little bit of that happening.
I thought in my mind, surely she's not talking about Manos, the Hands of
I'm
Fate.
absolutely talking about Manos, the Hands of Fate.
Yeah, he doesn't. His jacket is not decorative enough, but he like when you see him, like obviously he's not trying to blend in with the crowd, and when he pays his money, it is all in the most crumpled, dirty ones you've ever seen in your life.
He's like, "One, please," and like drops his money on the counter.
Just throws individual wadded up $1 bills that look like they've been buried like pirates' booty.
And I feel like that like adds to it because it's like, you know, clearly he knew that he was going to show up. He could have, you know, at least like uncrumpled them, you know, but he still just wanted to give her like crumpled up dirty dollars just because he just wanted to mess with her. And even though it's small, but you know, she went through it that night.
Yes, she is really working to unfold that stuff because she's going to have to make change at a certain point. As a former cashier, I like to line up my dollar bills. I don't have to do this anymore. But when I did have to handle cash, I like to line up ones, fives, tens, all facing the same direction because I'm a weirdo and it doesn't matter in the end.
It matters.
If you want a good idea of what the original screenwriter, director Alan Ormsby had for this film, he was the person who actually directed the footage we see from the B movies, Mosquito, Attack of the Electrified Man, and The Stench. Mm-hmm. So that is his one major component that survives the turnover from him writing and directing this to being ousted all in one go and being replaced by one of the cast members of Porky's.
I was hoping I'd be the one to break that news.
I apologize. We gotta start planning this out in advance, Gina. Who can make the Porky's reveal on the episode of Popcorn? Now, we all know, and we've discussed it here, so it's not a spoiler. Toby ends up being our killer. So I'm not really sure why we see him get locked outside the theater. Is that just an accident? Did he plan to do that? Or he got locked outside the theater and managed to kill that many people in one night?
I really think that he that was probably like an accident. And then viewer wise, you know, I thought that was supposed to throw us off.
Well, it does set up later on when Mark rips his pants and is attacked by a dog and all the things that he attests to in the aftermath of that accident. That does happen. So I guess he was telling the truth. But honestly, in the end, if he really got locked outside the theater, it shows his resilience in when a set of circumstances befalls him and nothing goes to plan. He's like, I'm just going to climb that fence and rip my pants. I'm fine. I have people to kill tonight.
I was going to say, I'm still going to go kill everybody.
He's got things to do and people to kill. Speaking of, Professor Davis is the one who launches the giant mosquito puppet during the movie. It works on a series of wires and an RC car controller for some reason, only it ends up lancing him through the chest when someone else hijacks a different remote control. One assumes that this is revenge for that possessed swordfish that he bested in Amityville 3D. See, it all comes right back around.
It had to happen at some point. Justice was served.
Zena, have you seen Amityville 3D?
I have.
Okay. That film is full of demon hugs. You got a skeleton hugging you, and at the end, you have a demon that comes out of a jacuzzi and gives another guy a hug after he burns half his face off. It's a very huggable movie.
And the guy has like a really funny scream.
Just He's like, very annoying. Whoa! Again, if I got half my face burned off by a demon coming out of a jacuzzi, I don't know that I would make the manliest of screams either. He's allowed to express his anguish as he intends to. This is not a judgment. It is simply an observation. I just have a note here that says Mark is the worst. I don't know why.
I mean,
I didn't notate that.
That's evergreen, honestly.
It
Yeah.
just works no matter what point in the movie you're watching. If Mark appears, guess what? Mark happens to be the worst person you're seeing on screen. And that includes scenes in which he shares the screen with a serial killer. But do you know who the best is? And that is the guy with Bob's big boy hair and a chin of destiny by the name of Bruce Glover, who shows up here inside of one of the former B movies as the man who is electrified in Attack of the Electrified Man.
Yeah, he's great. Bruce
Glover is a fantastic presence, and he is optimally weird here. He's just giving all the weirdness you need from a 60s movie.
Well, these movies are so they obviously they're making fun of them, but they're really pretty well done parodies of movies from that era. But my favorite part is they decide they're going to blow up the giant mosquito with an atomic bomb. And the one kind of dorky like Radar O'Reilly soldier is like, everyone get under a desk. And they're fine, and then they decide they have to kiss at the end, and then the dorky little soldier like winks at the camera like, amen.
That's when it reaches the penultimate Amazon Women on the Moon. And yet in the movie we're actually watching, our Toby is put Mission Impossible in it by putting on other people's faces.
Yeah, they just kind of skim right over how he's making these masks. Like he just has like this like futuristic technology of not only being able to make these incredibly lifelike masks, but also they somehow change his voice too. It's literally the Mission Impossible tech.
It's the voice changer from Scream and the interchangeable faces dynamic of Happy Birthday to Me, which no one notices even when they're kissing somebody. That person has a fucking rubber mask on their face.
But also he talks about how when he has to put on the appliances to look like Toby, or look like what Toby would look like if he wasn't burned over 90% of his body. He keeps talking about how much time it takes, and yet he's also jumping from face to face, like within a matter of like a few minutes, he's like changing these disguises.
It's a fantastic visual when Tina meets up with what she believes is Professor Davis and says, "Let's, we've been having an affair for months now. Let's have a quickie here behind this movie screen."
Don't you love how she just tells like her whole plan, like type of thing, just throwing that out there?
First of all, we will have sex right behind the screen. I will start by taking off your pants. Then hand stuff. We're really getting a breakdown of what's going to be going on here. And then I'm not entirely sure what happens when they kiss, but this apparently makes his lips melt off onto her lips.
You know what it reminded me of? Have you ever seen that parody of the Family Circus cartoon where it's supposed to look like some kind of like Lovecraftian horror where they're like their faces are merging and it says, "Oh my God, I can see forever." It reminds me.
Yeah, there's a bit of a shunting thing happening, and I'm not particularly sure why.
It's a little bit.
Their kiss is just that passionate that it melts rubber.
Yeah, it looks like their faces are like kind of like melting into each other. It's pretty gnarly, actually.
Yeah.
It is probably the grossest thing that happens in the entire movie. But Zena, how does Tina die?
I just assumed that her face just got sucked off, And
but that's his face. Her face remains the same to the point in which she's puppeteered by him later on. They can tell that she's Tina.
Yeah, he did strangle her though. Because I
think he pulled like a rope. He just pulled a rope around her neck.
Because there's also a rope around his neck. There's a lot of ropes. That's part of her plan for their behind the scenes fuck session. Is that apparently rope play is going to be involved.
Well, they're very kinky, Patrick. Don't judge.
I'm not yucking their yum, especially when their yum lasts so long that their kiss separates and parts of his face melt onto hers. I'm just happy that we finally, over the course of 8 years of doing this show, finally get a moment in which someone puppeteers a corpse convincingly.
Yeah.
Gina.
I love that.
Oh, I was
scene.
just gonna say, I do think it's pretty funny though how like she's just doing this sort of like scarecrow dance.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, have you seen Professor What's His Face? He's downstairs. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, bye.
Thank you, Tina. Why do you sound like that? I don't have time.
Yeah,
to,
they didn't have
you can
time.
explain it later.
Thank you, Tina. Go get a lozenge for God's sake.
I mean,
And
but Mark noticed. He noticed that she looked terrible.
Yeah, but he's also body shaming her. He's like, oh, she looks terrible. Fuck you, Mark. She's doing a lot. She had a cover for your semi-girlfriend while she flitted off doing fuck all. So give Tina a fucking break. She's recently dead. So Toby masquerades as Tina, goes up to Bud / Moochie, who is working the electrified chair machination in one of the balconies, and shaves his head, hooks him up to that electrical board so that when it reaches a specific point in the automation of electrical shocks, that it shocks him to death. And we get a pretty good approximation of the Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night 2 electrifying death from that film.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, my next note is Mark sucks. Again, don't know why.
In increasingly large letters. How many exclamation points are you at this point?
The weird thing is I'm not changing the font, and yet the font keeps getting bigger and more ornate. By the end of this, Mark Sucks looks like it's the cover of a heavy metal album. Now, Maggie is finally confronted by what she believes is Lanyard, while a reggae band plays in the dark, as Zena quite importantly noted, in the middle of a blackout with no power, they are still playing electric guitars and keyboards, keytars for crying out loud.
Yeah, they sound great though.
They do. This is not a problem with how they sound. We're just not sure how they produce the sound. And I was glad to know that they also got to have their own green room. And they survive. I assume they kick out after their performance. Like, well, we're not staying until after the third movie's done, and they survive the day. They don't have to see any of the horror machinations that happen later.
That's another thing that's interesting about this has got a relatively low body count. Like you would think that they would be setting up this rotten girl that Mark brings to the theater and this
Joy, yeah,
big galoot that sits down with her and basically takes over where Mark was, but they just get humiliated and they leave. They're gone.
You know what? I'm fine with that. As I mentioned to Zena before we started recording, any movie where I get to watch Kelly Jo Minter hit a dude in the nose and shove him out of a door is, again, that is a B+ or higher.
Yes,
I enjoy that. I enjoy that for her. I enjoy that for us. Meanwhile, Maggie is on the search for what she believes is Lanyard in the sewer underneath the theater. So
of course.
This has fully become Phantom of the Opera. And when it's revealed to be Toby and she's tied up in a chair, and we reveal that her aunt mom, Suzanne, played by Dee Wallace, is in a plaster cast with a gun that's also in a plaster cast. Interesting. When you have a character who has a burned face, right? You want it to be semi-realistic, but also you want that actor to be able to enunciate. What I'm saying is villains need lips, and they don't really give this guy workable lips when he doesn't have makeup on.
You know what though? I love this makeup. I do.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's cool.
I think it's so creepy. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I don't know why getting being burned in a fire gives you like vampire eyes, but or how this worked. These years and years of facial reconstruction. They means the doctors leave exposed staples in your face.
Yeah, and I guess if you took the staples out, it would just all become slack for whatever reason.
Just reminds me of ground beef, like his face.
Yes, and I only have the two qualms with the makeup job, which I think is very memorable and very cool looking. One is the lips. Two is when I see burn makeup, like it's the Freddy rule. Wet Freddy good, dry Freddy bad. And here, Toby's a little too dry. I need him to be moist, especially if he's taking and putting faces on and yanking them off. You need a little bit of lubrication to make it all shine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. He should be just like sort of moist from putting these masks off and on.
There's got to be some sort of lubricant happening here.
Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify is there to help you grow. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Now, Zena, what is your experience with Odorama?
I don't have any experience with it, sadly.
Gina, do you have Odorama or Odorama adjacent experience?
I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, as close as I have to it is I went to a revival of Polyester where they had the scratch and sniff cards. And that was fun. But I've never been to some place where they just pipe in odorous fog into a movie theater.
I do love how you could see like particularly with the electrical shocks and the fog. It's like, oh, this could accidentally kill people. No wonder they stopped doing this. Like these could.
You don't want amateurs in charge of this.
These chairs were like, with the electrical shocks were like exploding underneath people.
It's like when the kids touch the electric fence in Jurassic Park. That's how much of a current is running underneath their butts.
It's like, you need to sign a disclaimer.
They should be flying into the ceiling with smoke coming out of their butt like they're in a Looney Tunes cartoon. Now, at a certain point, Mark decides, I'm going to go to Toby's house. Because, again, this is good for the audience to get backstory. But it's backstory we've already been told about. So I'm not sure exactly why it happens, other than Toby seems to live in one of our favorite things, Gina, over the course of this podcast, and that is motivation dungeons. He lives in a motivation dungeon, so you can just look around at his walls and go, oh, I get why he's killing people now.
This tells me his entire life story.
Oh, look, he's framed this newspaper that has his backstory on it. Perfect. Now I get it. Even Mark, a complete dum-dum, gets this.
But, I kind of love it. And see, I feel like I'm just so biased because, with everything. But I love it, though, But because I remember I was rewatching Death Becomes Her, and there's kind of like a similar situation. Well, with a mirror, just like the obsession.
Sure. I get it. No, I don't begrudge your love of this because there's so much to love. I just have questions, and I'm glad we have you on board to answer them, such as Leon goes into a bathroom, once again, like Wolf, gets peed on. So that's twice, Gina. We have people get peed on.
Yeah, we're starting to get patterns here.
We are really seeing repercussions of the past 8 years of the show. And he then gets shoved into a toilet, locked in by a tiny key, which I may, I've only lived in California nearly all my life, but we don't generally have outside locks for bathroom stalls. And then something is thrown into the toilet and that bubbles over and he's like, oh no, and dies. Zena, how does this man die?
So, I don't know. I thought maybe it was because, was it the smoke?
Yeah, I thought it was like one of the smell things, but I mean, I don't know why they would be explosive.
Yeah, because Joni is breathing that all in when she's got a giant tube of it and is spraying it out. And for a while there, I thought the audience was getting pumped with a hallucinogenic at a certain point, but that wouldn't kill you just by throwing one of them discs in the toilet. Maybe, that's got to be some sort of phosphorus or something.
Maybe it was like considered like an explosion, like that thick smoke.
Yeah. It's like dry ice when you throw it in water, it bubbles up and it starts changing from a solid into a gas. But also that wouldn't kill you. I would like one tossed off thing that says breathe in X. You a-hole, as he exits the bathroom, but he doesn't. And we just like, I don't know. He died by bubbling toilet. And that's fine. It's fine. I got the most out of that scene when I saw him get peed on. And his reaction to getting peed on is, once again, not to move. It is to take it.
He's just busy standing there like, bah.
Yeah, I don't know what he's on, but I guess I want some if I'm going to get peed on. And so Leon's dead now, and Toby sets up for a giant recreation of the Possessor film, which, again, I'm not on nearly enough mushrooms to really enjoy, but I think it's fun to look at. And so while the audience is not really enjoying Possessor when he fires it up for them all, he then raises the screen as a sort of reproduction of Possessor. And that is when people are like, oh, it's live theater. Now I'm into it, which I've been in live theater, folks. This is not a reaction you get from an audience.
It's like,
people
oh,
don't go,
yeah.
whoa, now, wait a second. I came here to see these weird B movies, and now it's a live theater experience. Hooray! There might as well be flying cars in this movie. I still
all I can think about is that Onion article where it's like, oh God, performers are coming out into the audience.
Oh no, that cat is right next to me. Oh, they're roller skating now. Please. Oh no, I can't move. Yeah. The only thing worse is to be that cat or roller skater in the audience. That isn't fun. When I had to do children's theater in the round and go upstairs and sing in people's faces, they didn't enjoy it, Zena. I'm sorry. They didn't like it. It's probably a me thing because I have a lot of self-hatred, but they could smell it. They could feel it when I was barely hitting those notes. Ooh, not a singer by nature. Anyways, Toby tries to recreate the Zen moment. He stabs something that's supposed to be a lady, but is not a real lady. And then he sets up for this grand denouement where he's going to stab Maggie, who's plasticined in place. And then who comes out of the audience after climbing up the front of the building? More Mission Impossible, just seeping into the bones of this film, is fucking Mark. And Mark zips down a series of wires and crashes into a bunch of boxes. And that's his heroic moment, everybody. Luckily, he hits something, and that sends the giant mosquito careening down at Toby, who is stabbed through with the mosquito's giant proboscis. And that's the end of Toby. I had as much to do with Toby's death as Mark did, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that was just strictly dumb luck.
Yeah.
He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And luckily, Mark crashed into the right set of boxes to have that come off. And so...
Yeah, but you know what? He's going to constantly use that against Maggie. The next 12 times or so she turns him down for sex.
Right. Well, I don't really want to tonight, Mark. But Maggie, don't you remember that time I zip-lined down and crashed into a bunch of boxes and made a giant mosquito kill that guy who was about to kill you?
The crazy
All
thing.
right, we can do hand stuff. All right, just hand stuff.
The crazy thing is when you said "but Maggie," you really did kind of sound like Mark.
I can get into the character of Mark. But
were you like a 20-year-old dipshit at some point?
Oh, yes. Of course I was a 20-year-old dipshit at some point, Gina. Absolutely. Luckily, I was isolated from humanity. So I didn't have to interact with women at the time. I was a Mormon missionary, just wasting everyone's time and money, reading Stephen King books when I should have been spreading the gospel I didn't believe in. Zena, did you also serve a Mormon mission? I'm assuming the answer is yes.
No.
Okay. Just me. All right. That's fine. Zena, any last words about popcorn?
This movie is a lot of fun. But you know what? There's some stuff that, you both mentioned where it's just like, it is kind of like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense.
I think every movie we love on this show has plenty of wait a minute.
Yeah.
That we do not come for perfection.
True.
We come to be entertained.
We do.
And popcorn is entertaining.
And I feel like just as a horror fan, I just love the fact that it just has like this like clever setup where it's kind of for us horror fans, because truth be told, kind of like the question that I asked you guys, would you attend that movie screening, like their little film festival, like a horror marathon? And I would, I also agree with you guys, which just taking a step back where it's just like, I did want more kills, especially with the audience members. That would have been great to see, just putting it out there. But I mean, still, I feel like if you're someone who enjoys, slashers that has like a setup that you've seen before, a very familiar setup, because it has the whole vengeful killer on the loose, with his dirty dollar bills. This is the movie for you.
Yes, that's very true. But Zena, I will agree with you. It is very entertaining. I think it is worth our audience going out there and finding it and watching it. Or if it's not available yet, when it does pop up, get on board when you have the chance. Mm-hmm. I need you to, I believe that this film has the worst plot wrap of all time at the end of it. You can keep your Nightmare on Elm Street 4s and Nightmare on Elm Street 5s. That one I like. I like Houdini personally. But this one with the spooky, scary spiders, it's like this close to Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. Gina, anything that you have to wrap up when it comes to popcorn?
Oh, I had a very good time revisiting a movie that I, as I mentioned, I watched quite a few times when it, in its initial cable release, and then subsequently almost completely forgot about. Like I said, I think it's again, Tom Villard, God rest his soul, he really, really puts a lot into his performance and kind of gives he's a goofball, but he's also creepy, but he's also tragic, and I think that I do like, as implausible as it is, I do like his the big reveal of what he actually looks like under the Toby makeup. I wanted to agree with you that there is definitely supposed to be a bit of an homage to Phantom of the Opera there. So yeah, I think that this movie mostly suffered from maybe not being 100% sure what audience it was trying to appeal to, and maybe just being either a couple of years too late or a couple of years too early.
It just came in a weird period. This and Dr. Giggles, they need a bigger cult. Speaking of cult, there's a whole cult built around choose your own death venture. That's where we decide of the deaths in this film. If you were forced to die in one of those ways, well, which one would you choose and why? God forbid we have get stabbed with a big curving knife, or you can just get shot. You could burn up in a big theater fire, or you can get speared by a giant mosquito prop, shocked by an electric man, shocked in your wheelchair, or you can die by kissing a man in a latex mask and then get strangled. You can die by death by gaseous toilet. Are we missing any?
Or two different deaths by impaled on giant mosquito.
Yeah, you can either be it's death in front of people by giant mosquito or death behind the scenes by giant mosquito. But they're really just both deaths by giant mosquito. So Zena, you're our guest, and I choose you to go first.
Okay, I appreciate you. I'm gonna go with death by toilet because you know what? I'm pretty sure that he didn't see it coming, like at that point. So,
No.
And
there's a lot you're not going to see coming, Zena, including getting peed on just before this happens.
Yeah, but no one has to know. I mean, unless someone's like, oh, she got peed on before she exploded. So no, because at first I was going to say, with the fish, getting stabbed, but it's like, that's crazy. And even though that was a great shot at the end when the stinger did stab, like, Toby and he was spinning. I like that shot. But no, I'm going to go with, death by toilet explosion.
Yeah. Okay. That's your choice. You should stand behind it. Gina, what say you?
Now I'm getting stabbed by that giant mosquito, Patrick. Come on. Did you even need to ask what I was going to take?
Now, but given your secretive nature, right? You're a person who doesn't necessarily throw themselves up in front of an audience. You've been known to do it, but you're quite resident at times. So do you choose the behind the scenes death by mosquito or the on stage death by mosquito?
I think for this one, I actually am going to take on stage. I mean, that's going to be something no one ever forgets. I mean, when you see a lady get stabbed by a giant mechanical mosquito on stage, like you're going to be talking that you're going to be telling your grandchildren about that.
Are you going to a theater? Yeah. Here's what I saw at a theater once. And then you just start that whole story.
Oh, God, Grandpa, not again.
Of these, I think I'm going to die kissing what I think is Tony Roberts and then be strangled. That sounds like how I would go out, to be honest with you.
And also, you get to be dressed like a sexy horror nurse before.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And so I'm going to go out in the right outfit, and it all seems to line up in my favor. I think that makes sense. Folks, follow us on Patreon for extra bonus episodes. Go to joshhollis.com to get artwork like ours, or Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com to get this song or any of our remixes. Zena, where can people hear and see and read more from you out there on the World Wide Web?
Sure. So you can check me out on the Bloody Disgusting podcast. We have a new episode every Wednesday. Well, not every Wednesday, but you get it. Then you can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's just Real Queen of Horror. And on Twitter, Lovely Zena. So yeah, you can find me there.
And as I said when Megan was on, and hopefully we'll have John on here in the future, I find Bloody Disgusting and the three of you together on that show a delightful mix of personalities and viewpoints. I think you guys do a wonderful job, and I'm happy to listen to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. You guys have an awesome chemistry as well.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you. We've burnished it now for 8 years. That's right. Gina, did you realize that this is our 8th anniversary show? Oh. We're doing it a full month in advance.
I did not know, because we are usually not this well organized.
No, usually it's a last minute deal, as witnessed by the one year we celebrated our anniversary by watching Parasite, of all things.
Which is my idea. I own it.
So Gina, where can people see and hear more from you on these here internets?
I write about television and movies at thespool.net. I have a Substack, GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. I am on most social medias under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. There's more from us on the way. Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. It'll help us be seen and heard by more people. You know, we got more good stuff coming your way here next month, full of fun movies that we're going to talk about and fun guests too. I think you're going to enjoy it. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. For myself, for Gina and Zena. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.